What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Mac from MacTheMovieGuy.com, and today I've got yet another review for you. It's The Weekend Away. It's a new Netflix movie that you probably haven't heard of. I totally accept the fact that this will probably be one of my lowest rated videos. As a reminder, I am a blind film critic, so that's why I'm not staring into the camera, because I can't see the camera. I will be talking about things like audio descriptions, so if you have no idea what that is, you might learn something today. And I'll still be talking about things that regular movie critics talk about, like characters and plot. So that's, and this is not really a visual effects film, so if you were looking for the visual effects in The Weekend Away, you were looking in the wrong place to begin with. That's all I got about that. So we have to start with the plot of the film. So what is The Weekend Away about? Well, The Weekend Away is about two girls who decide to travel to Croatia for a little jaunt, little weekend getaway, when one of them mysteriously goes missing and the other one has to prove she didn't do it. Sounds kind of like it was ripped from the headlines, doesn't it? Just like a little bit. Feels so familiar. I mean, it's like there was this story in the news and they made a movie that was really close to it. Okay. So apparently this is based on a book. So it's not based on whatever that other thing was. You know what I'm talking about. And honestly, while watching the plot of the story unfold, it's not like the little summarization that they want you to believe anyway. It's actually a little bit more complex than that. So, as silly as it sounds, you have Leighton Meester playing an American woman who has been living in Britain for the last 14 years, where she met her best friend who is British, and the two of them decided to go to Croatia for vacation. And they there end up meeting this taxi driver who's Syrian. And it turns out that Leighton Meester, the American girl, can also speak some Arabic. So she ends up befriending this Syrian taxi driver that helps her out later in the film when her friend goes missing. I know that sounds silly, but that's probably the only silly thing about this film. The rest of the film is actually quite good story and structure-wise. What this film does a really good job of doing is introducing a ton of people who could have made the friend disappear, who had various motives and reasons, who all seem somewhat nefarious in their own ways. Even the main characters. Even Leighton Meester's character, it doesn't quite let her off the hook. One of the things that it does in this film is that it gives her these flashbacks. They went out to party the night before and she thinks she's been drugged and that's why she doesn't remember. But when she does remember things, the things that she remembers are not necessarily positive things that would rule her out as a potential suspect. So she's trying to find her friend. She decides not to go home. She has a husband. She's recently had a baby. And her friend has a husband that she's divorcing. So there's a lot of extraneous characters. There's a rather creepy guy who is renting them this sort of Airbnb space type thing that they're living in Croatia. There are some police officers, there are some male escorts, lots of people who could have done this. And the film actually does that really well. It totally creates this idea that anyone could have done it. It sells you on making sure that you know that they are either a bad person, or they have the means to kill, or they have a reason to kill. So I found myself the whole film going, I think it's that person. And then later on, the plot heavily sold me on somebody else. And I was like, oh, never mind. I didn't see this coming. This is definitely the person. And then later on, I was like, maybe it was the other person I thought it was. I love those movies. I love not being immediately able to see the ending of the film from the beginning of the film. So kudos to The Weekend Away, which I had totally written off. This film is way better than it has any right to be. So good on you for that. The negatives in this film pretty much just surround Leighton Meester, who, listen, I love XOXO Gossip Girl as much as anybody else. I'm a fan of Leighton Meester. I just think that this is probably not the subject material I would have thrown at her. It's a little bit much, a little bit heavy for her range and capability. She was fine in Country Strong. This is a little bit beyond her, and it shows in parts where she's supposed to be like really stressed out or frantic, or her emotions sort of pushed to extreme levels, you might say. You kind of lose her. She has a good skill in what she does. I would have much rather seen her do like a romantic comedy, I think, or even just something lighter than this. But this is kind of like a film that, had the genders been flipped, Liam Neeson might be doing. And she ends up at some points feeling like this is too much for her. I would have loved to see this film maybe go to like Scarlett Johansson, because it's good enough. The script is good enough that if somebody had actually taken 2 minutes to go, maybe we could get somebody more A-list than Leighton Meester, they probably could have. And nailed at least like a Kate Beckinsale or something like that into this film. It's a bit much for her, but I do like her as an actress. She ended up being the thing I liked the least about the film, and it's her film. I mean, there's nobody else in this cast really worth mentioning in terms of their career that you'd be like, oh, that guy's in it. There just isn't. It's basically just catered around her. So the audio description in this film is actually really solid, which again is surprising because I expected nothing from this film. I also got really good audio description. I always knew where I was. I always knew what characters were on screen and coming and going. And it answered all of these questions for me. It kept me involved in the mystery and intrigue. And I was able to stay up to date with all of the clues as they were unfolding. This is probably the best way to say it without doing any spoilers. It gave me what I needed for this type of movie, except there's one negative, one little qualm I have about this audio description, and that is that when Leighton's character has these flashbacks, oftentimes, almost every single time, they were not described. We didn't know what was on in the flashback. You could just sort of hear that there was a flashback and some things were happening, and she's trying to remember what happened that night. And it would have been nice to have those details, because obviously they're informing a visual audience as to what went down and what she remembers. Ultimately, I don't think it was useful to who is the villain, but in those scenes it feels like we're left out because we don't know what's in those flashbacks. So that's probably the one thing. And they're brief. They're only like a couple seconds each time, but it would have been nice to know what they were, instead of just sort of like hearing like screaming or glass breaking or you bitch. I love that one. That was my favorite one. I have no idea what the context of that was, but that was my favorite flashback. Anyway, so that's The Weekend Away. I didn't know that I was getting myself into a film that I'd actually be excited about talking about. I didn't know that I would get into a film that I would actually end up recommending. I liked The Weekend Away. I don't know how everybody else is feeling about this. I think most people are going, Leighton Meester? What the hell has she been up to? And they're just like going on to the next thing. And they're just not watching it. Its score on IMDb suggests that it's typical of what's happening a lot of times now, which is we have this notion to immediately score streaming films lower, like we're mad at them or something for going to streaming instead of to theaters. So it's like in the fives. That's really low for this film. It's not a 5 film. It's a lot better than that. So I'm gonna go ahead and give The Weekend Away a B+. Yeah, I possibly would have taken this into the A range if we had had a different female lead. So really, it's most of why it's in the B range has to do with Leighton. Sorry, Leighton, I love you, but this was not your film. The force was not strong with you in this film. So that's The Weekend Away. Have you seen it? Did you know this film existed? What other random Netflix films do you like? Let me know in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And go to macthemovieguy.com for more of me and film reviews. And also, don't forget to check out the Audio Description Project, where you can plan out your movie night by finding out which movies have English audio description and where they are. You can search by streaming service. You can find out which Netflix movie has English audio description. Maybe you don't want to watch The Weekend Away and you want to see what else is on Netflix. Head over to the Audio Description Project and check it out. All right, that's been good. Until my next review,